Hello, everybody. We are out in the world today. I am in my vehicle, and today we're going to talk about court-ordered sales and foreclosures. Thank you for your patience. I know we were supposed to start at noon, but had a bit of a delay this morning. So this will be recorded. It will go up on our YouTube channel as well, and also live in this group. So the reason I want to talk about court-ordered sales / foreclosures is in the last year, through WellShare, we have acquired 2 court-ordered sales, and it was a process I hadn't been through before personally and learned a ton. And there were very complicated deals that I wanted to kind of share a little bit about what I learned. And given how difficult it is to find inventory right now, if you're looking out there in the world or want us to kind of keep an eye on these for you, this could be a space where you could find some inventory in a low inventory kind of setting that other people are going to be steered away from. And we're going to talk about the reasons why they're going to be steered away. And then you can decide for yourself if that's, something that's of interest to you or not. So I'm just going to put my notes here. The first thing I want to talk about is just what is a court sale, what is a foreclosure, and they do happen for different reasons potentially. Most of us know foreclosure, that a bank or a lender forecloses on a property, meaning the current owner has stopped paying their mortgage payments, and eventually the bank or the lender will foreclose upon the property to be able to pay off the mortgage on the property and bring in a new owner. This can also occur, a court-ordered sale can also occur even in disputes like divorces or family disputes, or other things can occur where a court orders a property to be sold for whatever reason is being kind of brought about, because with this property kind of being something tangible that potentially the two parties are disputing over. So none of that really matters necessarily to you, but the properties that we bought were brought into a court-ordered sale because of the financial situation of the old owner. And so next, kind of what's important to understand is what are the risks and what are the benefits when it comes to court-ordered sales. Also, team, if you're here, like jump in if you have a question on something, or I'm skipping over something, or if there's something on Facebook land, because I'm not seeing those chats. But if you have questions, let me know. Happy to address them. But the benefits of a court-ordered sale or a foreclosure for the buyer, potentially, not always, but potentially, is you can get a property at a decent price, where you also may be able to find inventory in a place where you may not be able to find inventory. That's usually the benefits that attract people to a foreclosure or court sale. Especially if it's a unique property or something that's really hard to find. In our case, we were looking for multifamily real estate in Calgary that was new or newish construction, and there happened to be 2 court-ordered sales in Calgary that fit those criteria. And so for us, it made a lot of sense to look at those for WellShare because they were young. They were only a couple years old. So, but the risks are something that you do need to know about. So, and this is where the process really starts to become different than just picking up a property on the MLS or a resale property. So the court's main mission is to get the lender or whoever whoever it's important to get the most amount of money for the property, period. That's their primary mandate. So in our case, there was a first position mortgage, a second position mortgage, and so on and so forth, and several also writs on the title, which showed, taxes, insurance, things that were unpaid that were attached to the property that we can all see when we pull title. So always, always, always pull title when you are doing a transaction. And that's what we do for you, of course, as part of our um, uh, offer process. But what that means is, for due diligence, is you're not given necessarily a full package either. Whereas if we go to buy a resale property, the seller has to disclose any defects, any issues, whatever might be important to the sale of the property is communicated between the two parties. In a foreclosure or court-ordered sale, you get what you get. you get what you get. You don't get upset, just like what they say in preschool. Because and you also can't get upset if the information given to you is not full and complete, or there may be errors in it, there may be problems, and so you have to be aware of all those risks and plan for the unknown as well. And so things that we discovered through these, processes where we had, our, documents in terms of leases and things, we often didn't get a full picture of what those were. There was incentives that were attached to the leases that were not provided to us. And that's just how it is. Like, that's not a bad thing. It's just, that's how it is when you go through this process. And so any defects with the property, you don't know for sure what's going to be there on closing day either. So appliances, if there's furniture left over or whatever, it's as is. And that truly means that. And so you have to be prepared for that. So that could mean some surprise expenses if you need to buy new appliances, or there's people potentially living there that you don't even know who they are because your lease agreements weren't necessarily accurate to what you thought. And then lastly, also, is you're often don't have the same access rights, whereas on a regular listing, often you can for sure view it. You won't necessarily be able to view all court-ordered sales or foreclosures. Sometimes you can, for sure, and sometimes no, you can't. And so, which is another risk. You don't really know what you're, getting yourself into. So that is a risk for sure. So you work with what you have, then you also do your own kind of digging and research and budgeting for the things that, could go wrong. So that's kind of a little bit about what they are, how they work. And I think most people know those items. Where I think the uncertainty lies in this is like, what is the process and how does it actually work, and what can I expect? So for a sale that's going through the courts, if there is a court component to it, you do have to abide by the court process. If the foreclosure is directly with the lender and it's with a lawyer, you may send an offer directly to a lawyer who will then coordinate with the lender themselves. If it's a court sale, then it's going in front of a judge through the court system. And that judge's mandate is to do whatever is best for whoever has, their money at risk or whatever the concern is with the property. And so for a court-ordered sale, typically what happens is the listing agent, their job is to collect offers. If they have one decent offer that the listing agent can stand up in court and say, I believe this is a fair, offer based on the condition of the property or the market conditions or whatever, they have to flag when they basically receive an offer that looks to be reasonable. Once that's done, then a court date is set. And that court date could be, weeks. It's, usually a few weeks in that kind of range, up to 6 weeks, depending on how long the wait is. By that court date, from the time they get that first reasonable offer and up until the day of court, any new offers could be entered. And so in both of the scenarios of the acquisitions we did, we were not the first offer to the table. There were other offers on the table. And so we kind of used that time to do our homework, knowing that the court date was, 3 weeks away or 2 weeks away, and use that time to do our homework, do our research, and then determine if we wanted to essentially put in our final offer closer to the court date. You can do it either way, and there's pros and cons when you come to the strategy of this. And there, that's just how we ended up doing it. And so on the court date, all the offers are submitted to the court-appointed lawyer, and the court-appointed lawyer shows up in court and says to the judge, okay, I've got X amount of offers, A, B, C, and they run through them quickly, the high points. And then, clearly at that point, often there would be a winner. In terms of winner, as in who is the highest offer. All of these offers at this point do not have conditions, so they are clear offers. They do need to have a deposit in hand at the lawyer's office as well. And the judge will then look at them and choose most likely the highest offer. And it's stamped, and that's it. You wait now for what's called your vesting order, and that's your final document to prove that you then have acquired the property. And it'll also stipulate terms such as closing date. If there is, other terms like, leases in the property or whatever else might form part of the deal will be in that vesting order. That vesting order is, the kind of signed, sealed, and delivered document. Now, what I found really interesting on both of these when we were in court was that there was no question to any of the parties how they were going to finance the deal, or what the plans were or whatnot. They did ask a little bit about timelines, like, does this timeline work for you, yes or no, kind of thing. But there wasn't like, show up with your cash, proof of cash or proof of financing or any of that in hand. So I found that quite interesting. You can do what you want with that, but it was really just who had the highest offer. And that was it. And so it's not necessarily a super complicated process. The only time where it gets a little bit nerve-wracking, let's say, is if they do end up with more than one offer. Prior to that day in court, the lawyer can recommend what's called a sealed bid process. So if they think these current offers, or there might be other offers coming in, may change their offers on that first day in court, the lawyer may suggest that to send everyone back and go to a sealed bid process. And what that means is you're putting in your best and final offer, just like in a competing situation, and it's in a sealed envelope. The realtor does not know what the offers are, and they're opened only by the lawyer and shared directly with the judge in court on the next kind of court date. So in both of the scenarios we had, it went to a sealed bid process. There was 2 court dates, the first one, and then they kind of, just decided upon sealed bid. They gave everyone a week or so, like 5 to 7 days, to resubmit their offer and come back, and then that was it. So that was the process. Once the vesting order was received, then you have to plan for closing as well. And depending, how you're financing or what you're doing, that is a short window, like typically 45, to 60 days, even 30 days possibly. So you have to have your kind of ducks in a row and kind of be ready to go, because that time will go quickly. But hopefully up till then, you've already got your preparations made. But the hard thing with all of that is you don't know if you're going to be the winner. So you don't know if you're going to come out of there ahead. And for us, especially in multifamily, that meant we still had to spend money on appraisals and the assessments and some research and due diligence. So you're still spending money ahead of time, possibly on even legal advice before you move ahead. So just be aware of that there could be costs incurred, but you may just have to eat those if you don't end up the winner of the transaction. Any questions on any of that? Does anyone ask anything, or is that all clear as mud? No? Okay.
No questions.
Okay. The biggest sort of lessons made through doing this twice now myself, and the things that I learned the second time from the first time. So first time, a big surprise that we had, sort of, or unknown, was the leases that we were given as part of the sale were not complete. And we did not know that the previous owner had incentives on the majority of the leases for the acquisition. And we found out about them kind of the day before closing, like right around closing. And they were significant. And what these incentives were they were kickbacks to the tenants for who knows what, like, every single month there was kickbacks, there was gifts, there was all kinds of things. And in that first acquisition, we had actually assumed the leases. So that was part of the vesting order. It said that we would assume the leases. It also said that the security deposits would be transferred to us, which honestly, we are still trying to sort that out. But so it was challenging because we didn't know the entire picture, but all the tenants living there, of course, did. So when we took over, that was something we had to work through. But again, it's a court sale. These are the risks, right? Is that you don't know for certain what you're kind of walking into from that respect. The second thing I already mentioned, but I think it still surprises me that that there was no requirement to prove how you were going to close. There was no requirement to show how you were going to pay for this, how you were planning to close, as long as you had your deposit in hand and your clean offer in place. That was it. And then the third one, which is the largest thing with all the hundreds of transactions I've done, I've never come across, and this happened on the second one. And it has to do with the appliances in the property. And now that I know this, any court-ordered sale or foreclosure or whatever, this would be a risk and something you need to be aware of, and something your legal team can do some research on. And it's called the personal property. And there's a thing called a personal property report. And there's one on everyone and every group out there. But certain items from that personal property report can be attached to an address. And in this case, and apparently a lot of these type of sales, it's the appliances in the properties. And so what we found out with the last acquisition was the appliance provider for the property had not been paid in full for all of the appliance packages put into the units a couple of years ago. And so our lender actually pulled this report, and it's called a personal property report. And so I called and had a call with the appliance company. And apparently this is quite a common thing where if there is some sort of, foreclosure or court sales, if the appliances were not entirely paid for, then this personal property report is filed kind of against the property. It does not show up on a regular title search. It is a separate search, this personal property search. And so even though it's not attached to the title, if it was attached to the title on a court-ordered sale or a foreclosure, the title does get wiped clean. So you're not assuming any of those previous issues. Those are not yours. However, the personal property is a little bit different because that appliance provider has appliances in the property that have not been paid for, and they can file these reports. So never came across that before ever, and so learned a lot with that with the appliance company. So that would be kind of something, if we ever do this transactions again with the team, that'll be one of the first things I will ask the lawyers to do, is to do this personal property report, or PPR, search on the property to ensure there's nothing in the property that's reported sort of unpaid or missing or whatever. As it turned out in our case, we had some of these serial numbers in the property and some of them not. So we're kind of working to find a solution with the appliance company. but the serial numbers that were not in the property will still remain as kind of unpaid or unhandled, let's say. So never have I encountered that. And so that was a big learning lesson, and something that, and you could run this at any time on, any property if there was ever concern. On a regular purchase contract that we use as realtors here, the contract covers all of this. So you don't need to worry about this for any other transaction other than if it was maybe a private sale written up on some, document that wasn't, the standard contract, or these court-ordered sales or foreclosures. And if you've ever read a contract that's used in these types of transactions, pretty well every component that protects you as the buyer is struck out of the contract. So any defects, any issues, they don't need to disclose anything. And so there's just all that, potential risk that you are assuming that you could. So that'd be one quick search. Apparently it's very easy to do, this PPR search. So that was one of my biggest things I'd never heard of. And just the due diligence being restricted. We kind of got a little bit, better the second time. Obviously we learned a lot the first time going through it, but just doing your best. But honestly, just having a budget set aside for the who knows what, because there probably will be some sort of surprises. If it was just a regular homeowner and they, couldn't afford to pay their mortgage, they're probably not maintaining their furnace and their hot water tank and their vents and who knows what else. So plan for deferred maintenance on any type of property, even if it's a little condo up to a building. Like there's things that we need to maintain. So I would expect those on any of these type of sales to be deferred. So set aside budget for that, and also set aside just in case those appliances are not there on closing date. Make sure that you have a plan to replace those. If the property is vacant and it's locked up and no one's living there, I would say the risk is lower. If there's people living there and they're really disgruntled and angry and frustrated, then there's maybe a bit more risk of things maybe being not left as you would like to see them. But in our case, there was tenants living in all of these units, and they, for the most part, had no idea what was going on in terms of the transaction. So we were able to communicate them, to the best of our ability as soon as we were able to. Which is kind of the last thing that I would mention too, is in both of these instances, because we were, buying property that had tenants living there, that first month of acquiring it, because you probably cannot speak to the tenants ahead of time, you're not planning like a normal, closing process like you would get acquiring a property with tenants. They may be a little bit uncertain on, like, they don't know what's happened, right? Like what's happened to their landlord, what's kind of gone on here. So just plan for that first month to spend the proper time getting things sorted out for them. If there is tenants in the property, maybe they're also got things to tell you and things that aren't working, and probably have been a little bit frustrated as well. So just be patient in that first month and figuring out how you're going to move forward. But 9 times out of 10, there's a pretty easy solution that most people are happy with. So that was kind of just the other thing, that there was very much, especially in the second one, we did not assume leases. There was very little sort of like plan for the existing tenants in the property. The contract stated we were not assuming the leases. The previous owner was to return security deposits to the current tenants, and we were to just start over again, basically, with them, with new leases and new terms and whatever. And that's exactly what we're doing. So, but it's a little bit upsetting, of course, for the tenants at first. They don't know who we are or what we're doing, and that's totally understandable. So yeah, that's kind of everything, I think, for what I've learned so far. I mean, and also the very last thing would be probably every single one is going to be a little bit different. Like, truly, different circumstances. And so if you're going to get into this space, you have to be flexible. You kind of have to treat it like a business, try to take the emotion out of it, because there's going to be surprises and bumps and problems you didn't know that you had. But if it makes sense and the numbers work, then still I would do it again. I mean, we've done it twice now and would absolutely do it again. So, also all in all, like, there's only a couple other interested parties on these ones. I mean, these were large transactions, but I think most buyers, it's a big endeavor to go down this path. So if you are kind of up for it, let us know, and we can obviously chat with you directly and see if there's anything that pops up in this space that might make sense for you. Is that anything I missed? Questions, comments, concerns, or is that pretty good?
I think we have any other questions. One thing I wanted to add, and you kind of touched on it already, Natasha, is I find I get a lot of questions from clients more so within the residential space, like, oh, can we ask the listing realtor this? Because typically in the residential space, there is a listing realtor. And I know we've chatted about this before, like the listing realtor is not able to disclose anything. So that's where the due diligence piece comes in for sure. But I think that's something important to know is, during a normal transaction, we can ask for more information on the roof or history if we see water stains or things like that. But in these transactions, it's as is, whereas there's not a lot of information that can be provided there, and you have to be okay to accept that.
Yeah, exactly. And so just to be clear, so both of these, there was a listing agent, and their duty is to the court or whoever the seller is, right? And so they have to be very careful with what they say. And you're right, like, you don't get to know that. I had one listing that I did that was a court sale, or I don't know if it was a quarter for, it's a long time ago now. And when I went there to inspect the property the first time, like walk through it, like I've never seen cockroaches in Calgary. There was cockroaches in this property. And so I go there and I went in, walked right out. Like, there was literally so many cockroaches. And so I called the lawyer and kind of told them what I found. So they ended up spraying the property or something to get rid of these cockroaches, but it was not something I could ever disclose to anyone. I knew about it, but that wasn't a disclosure. And the only reason they sprayed it was because they still wanted showings. Like, they wanted people to come and make sure. But that's a pretty significant, and I don't know if it was still in the ceiling, like the attic, I don't know how well it was handled, but yeah, I could not say anything to anyone about any of it. And that's all that they can do. So yeah, you have to be prepared for all of those. Also, people will ask about, was it a marijuana grow up? Which is, a risk that they do not have to disclose to you either. And so any of those things, any of those defects, issues, history of the property, yeah, they do not have to tell you anything. And also, particularly in the, residential space too, like some of the deals people can find in the States, in particular in this space, is quite good. So that it's really worth it to go for these types of properties. It's not always the case here. Sometimes the price is not that much different than what the regular market might bear. And the bank or whoever owns the property, if they're fine to be patient, then that's their kind of prerogative. And so they might sit a little bit longer, but they may also just have their number, and that's what they want it to be, to pay out whatever is owing, right? So it's not necessarily a smoking deal either, just because it is a foreclosure or a court-ordered sale. It's very property specific for sure.
I've been seeing properties lately that have been on for court-ordered sales that have potential, and they've been competitive. They have a court date set, and there's 10 plus offers on them. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, for sure. And it's kind of an interesting process too. Like, you can also go and sit in on that court date, even if you're not a party to it. This is public court. So if that's ever interesting to someone to kind of see the process, you can kind of sit in quietly and listen in to it's very interesting. I found it very interesting kind of listening to all the cases of the day and kind of what was on the docket, but very interesting stuff. Creative way to go about things. Even time of year could be interesting there. Like there may be, you know, less of these type of investors, you know, shopping for this in these slower months. So keep an eye on it if there's something interesting that pops up. And just because there is multiple offers does not mean I wouldn't put an offer in. Like, because people will lowball these all day long. And I mean, you have to be somewhat realistic with your number, but there could very well be two like incredibly low offers that are just, you know. So yeah, that's kind of everything. If anyone needs anything else or has any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. But that's all I got today for foreclosures and court ordered sales.